Hey, welcome to the Better Podcast. Let's do this, guys. I'm excited to get started today.
Yeah, I'm too.
Excited to have James Rericha in today.
Welcome.
And we have Danny.
Intern Dan.
Hello.
Intern Dan. Lindo is coaching soccer for 8 weeks, and so we got Danny in here. You want to go by Dan or Danny?
I'm a Danny.
You're Danny?
I'm a Danny.
All right, unless it's Kale saying. How long you two known each other?
Oh no. What's your first memory of me?
Oh,
We didn't like Kale.
I
Now I love Kale.
I joined Holy Family in fifth grade, and so they already had their group.
was that in Hannibal?
Yeah, at
Hannibal?
Holy Family,
Yeah.
and so it was a class of 20. So here I was,
the
the new
outsider.
guy. I was the outsider trying to break into the group, and it took us like 3 years to become
We
friends.
didn't like Kale.
And then once we became friends, we never quit. So we lived together 5 years and went our separate ways after that. So it's been good.
That's in college.
In college,
In
yeah.
college, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're college roommates. Look at that. Got the Tiger shirt on over there and everything. Looking good, man. Well, thanks for being in here.
Thank you
Got a
for
radio
having me.
station back in Hannibal you're running and doing. And what's that radio station?
KHBL 96.9 FM.
And what are we listening to on there?
50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and a touch of everything in between.
Nice.
And some Hannibal Pirate football on the on
We were
Fridays.
the proud home of the Hannibal Pirates from August through sometimes December, usually November.
Kale talks about, don't you guys claim some football player or something from Hannibal, a kicker or who's the football? Didn't someone go play Notre Dame or?
Wasn't there? I don't know that I. Was there one guy that?
Aeneas, right now.
Oh yes, Aeneas is actually
we
right
got
now.
yeah, we have a star-studded freshman running back. He'll be playing at Notre Dame this year.
That's awesome.
He played in the spring game, so
Yeah.
he got some good snaps, so he'll be an impact player.
That's awesome. Well, hey, thanks for coming down and helping us out right now, getting us going. Welcome to the Vetted Podcast. I'm Stephen Herman.
I'm Kale Flasspolar.
I'm Danny Norman.
And our guest today is James Rericha from R Veterinary. We're really happy to have you on today. And as we've been shooting, I got to get through a few minutes before I say the other word for YouTube purposes. Shooting the crap, I guess I can say that. Going back, looking along the history, I put you in the group we call the OGs of clients.
Nice.
You came on with Wes and I back in the day, more like on the financial planning, estate planning, and what I love about you and of course your wife Katie, who's Dr. Katie Rericha, and is that the entrepreneurial side, the innovative side. I mean, we hit it off. It's like what can we do for the veterinary industry? And since that day, you've been a big part of where ProPartners has gotten to. Believing in us to help guidance, and where our guidance was like, I know how to run a business. I ran grocery stores, and it was like, how can I translate that to help people with their veterinary businesses and things like that? You believed in us, and I really thank you, because we wouldn't be sitting here today without people like you and Katie being fans of ours.
That's a two-way street, I think we're both like rocket ships taking off here, and the guidance we've gotten from DVM partners throughout the years, it's evolved. But working with other independents, working with you guys to help define our culture, and now you're working with all of our practice managers to help them. Coaching's important.
It's huge. It's huge. That side of it's big. And what's cool is you've seen all like DVM Partners, DVM Office, DVM Connect, the brands, the solutions we have. You knew about those before they're launched, because do you think this is a good idea? You're one of the few you should do that. And
I love it.
Yeah, that's been cool. And we got more to come. You know that.
Absolutely.
So.
You were actually my first client meeting that I was ever a part of.
Awesome.
That I can recall. Maybe that's not 100% true, but we went to the accountant, and we all sat around the table together, and I came
Is that
in.
the big table?
It was at the big table, and I was like, "Wow, this is a real thing."
That was a big table.
This is
First
a
time
real
to the big
deal.
table.
Yeah, it's like a
And
20-person table.
It was a big table, but it was cool to walk in and see what you guys had going on. But it's also been fun to be a part of your growth and see you just had a couple practices at the time, and now you've grown quite a bit since then. So it's been fun to see the evolution.
Yeah,
8 and counting.
that's right. All since May 21st, 2016.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Starting down in Lynn Creek, Lake of the Ozarks area. Probably more people know Lake of the Ozarks. Lynn Creek's got a hell of a story for Lake of the Ozarks, though, being a relocated town, and I mean all kinds of stuff, right? Not to go down a rabbit hole, but
Yeah, no, it's
yeah,
awesome. My best friend, his grandfather owned the filling station in the original Lynn Creek,
really.
and there's photos of him basically riding on top of the pumps because he didn't want to give up his land, you know.
No, the
Yeah,
water level's coming up. There's no stopping at that.
Nope.
Water wins.
Yes, yes.
And a big utility company. We bought the land already, so
100 years ago, there's still fights over land.
yeah, yeah. Well, you're a Central Missouri guy, Jeff City.
That's right. Jeff City graduate. My wife's a Jeff City graduate.
You're S&T, we say now, right?
Yeah,
but
I have a
how-
degree from Missouri S&T,
Yeah.
Master's in Engineering Management, and my undergraduate is from UMR,
Mm-hmm.
or before that it was Missouri School of Mines.
Yeah.
But my wife is Mizzou through and through, undergrad in biology, a year off because she didn't get into vet school up front, and fought and worked at a lot of vet clinics
She's an amazing
to
veterinarian.
get in, and she went in a year later. We went to high school together. She was one of my twin sister's best friends, so
Okay.
she was always kind of off limits to me. So we never saw each other. I mean, there was no thoughts of that. But we reconnected while she was in vet school, and that was an odd concept to me because I had graduated. I'd been out working for a few years as a professional engineer, and I come back home and I meet her, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, here's a high school graduate, same class. Oh, you still have 3 years of college left?
What are you doing that for?
But it's been great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, it definitely has been great because you, too, with you being the business side of the business, and her being the veterinarian she is, the producer she is, plus having 4 kids.
That's right.
This all goes on. It's been amazing. She's a hard worker. Obviously, I remember getting down to in Lynn Creek there and seeing how she operates with animals is amazing. She has a gift.
She's always down on the floor with the animals. She'll remember your animal before she remembers you. Unfortunately, she loves the animals.
Yeah.
She took a job that was a walk-in clinic, and I think that really shaped her in her first parts of her career, and that it was challenging. You didn't say no to anything that walked through the door. It was this weird hybrid of they weren't an ER, but anything that walked through the door, they did their best to see it and stabilize it, and if it really needed referral or to see if they could see it there. And several years of emergency service, and it's evolved over the years, but
Right.
that really challenged her, pushed her to say, how do I help as many of these customers as possible and these pets as possible, because you'd have this line standing literally out the door at 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
And this is Lynn Creek, right?
Yeah, Lynn Creek. 20, 30 people deep.
Yeah.
all
She started
expected to be
working there
seen.
and then, buying it. And yeah. Well, that's that old school. They're old school too, right?
Yeah.
The veterinarians. Well, they probably were 70 in the 70s when they graduated, or 80s or something from vet school.
I
And
think Dr. Wilsman was probably even before that. So
Wow.
Dr. Wilsman, Dr. Rachel Radland, and Dr. Stephen Ward, all excellent mentors. They'd all been there for more than a decade, I believe, at that time.
Okay.
Wilsman, I think, bought in just before 1984, so he's
Okay.
definitely been practicing probably since the late 70s.
Yeah.
It's just, again, a great experience. I think she started there in 2013, and as I said, we bought in 2016.
Yeah.
We started evaluating because the owner was older, close to retirement age. Like, who's going to buy this thing?
Yeah.
And no one had even asked that question. But and maybe it was me pushing and asking the question. But working on that for several years with learning at the SBA. We went before we'd met you guys. I think we visited the SBA or the extension office down at Missouri S&T
Yeah.
and the extension office at Mizzou to try to build a business plan. And we struggled with, offers over a 2-year period. My wife was adamant about buying the clinic that she worked at. She loved everybody that she worked with. And that's where she wanted to be, because we actually had talked to another clinic that was local, maybe 7-10 miles away. Gentleman was retiring, had openly advertised it. It was interesting, but she really wanted to be with the team she had.
Yeah.
And then in the first year, we learned what business was about and how we were, trying to re-envision our own ideas on it. And that was a big learning process for us, in that, we came in and we didn't didn't get buy-in to our ideas, and we forced a lot of things, and we ended up turning over 75-80% of the staff. And that was tough.
Yeah, it's
it was a really rough first year.
Yeah.
And we learned a lot in that process on how we do it. You know, I've learned a lot in every process and it's gotten smoother and smoother. You know, we've actually said no to clinics lately. Like, we want to find somebody who's a good culture fit with us.
Right.
And that's huge, because this last acquisition was Kerrville Veterinary Clinic with Dr. Cohn. You know, I've
That's
met
Branson area.
with Branson area.
Yeah.
I think we met and talked with him over an 18-month period at several conferences. We getting together for lunch. You know, probably less than 10 visits in total and some emails back and forth, but really trying to get comfortable with each other that we were a good fit, because we're not going to move our doctors into a practice, and so we're looking for somebody who wants to stay around. You know, and then his amazing story is still working there to this day. Is the gentleman he bought it from in man, I can't think of it. It was 82. He's I believe in his 80s.
Okay.
And he works 1 day a week.
That's great.
I don't know if I don't think I'm announcing anything here, but he's going to retire.
Okay.
Next month. He doesn't want any fanfare.
Yeah.
But you know, to work 20 some years while Dr. Cohn owned it.
Yeah.
You know, that's what Dr. Cohn envisions, or what he shared with me. Is like, hey, if this is great and I'm loving it, I'd love to be here as long as I enjoy practicing. So,
If I can, I want to step back a little bit into engineer. You're an engineer.
yeah.
Obviously, you've got Dr. Katie. We know is a veterinarian. Oh, your dad runs his own business. Have you always had that entrepreneurial, want to own your own business, you know, but didn't know what business you were going to end up at? Kind of was that? Yeah. But
That's pretty fair. You know, I don't know if this was in, you know, grade school or middle school. You know, it's in the early 90s, late 80s. You know, I think we talked millionaires being what billionaires today, and
right.
you know,
Right. Isn't that crazy?
really weird. I would absolutely aspire to, like, there's nothing wrong with that. I want to be in that position. You know, and then growing up with my father, he's a hard worker. You know, it didn't matter when I was hanging out with him. Most of the time I spent with him was working, doing something, whether it was, you know, around this camp that we lived at as caretakers. And so we'd be cutting wood or cleaning the pool or cutting grass.
Yeah.
And then throughout the week, all the way from probably middle school through high school, you know, we were off in the summer or winter break. I might get to go on a work trip with him and spend a week. And it was hard labor. We'd go out on an airport and do construction. But I learned a lot of skills from him. And he still, I mean, I'm ashamed to say it, he's probably still got a better work ethic than I do today. He is a workaholic.
That's a unique business too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
who knows what ice detection equipment is for
Yeah.
airports and bridges.
Yeah.
Very unique. You know, he's been in it since he graduated from high school. It's transformed from working for someone else to owning his own company and doing the service work all over the country.
Yeah.
It got me an opportunity to see a lot of the country with him. He always told me the hardest thing was having employees, and that is very true. Lots of challenges with it, and
Rewarding in both, right?
well, you say rewarding. It's become one of my core values, or one of my major goals. I would like to be the largest employer in our county.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and you know, it's been that for the last 3 years with you guys.
Right. Right. Which is phenomenal. So yeah, you have to have that bug in you to, I think, be successful in business. That's something you want to do. It's just like anything where, you know, how long did Katie, when did she know she wanted to be a veterinarian?
As long as back as she can tell me, she knew she wanted to be a veterinarian.
Yeah. You knew you wanted to run a business as far back as you can.
Absolutely.
That's that with me too, with going to work at 5:30 in the morning on Saturdays. Every Saturday with my dad, you know, to be babysat when I was 9. You know, is what he said I was doing. But I still worked and got paid. I can say that now, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, riding into work, listening to NPR, like listening to business news, listening to all that stuff. It's interesting. I look back on and be like, oh, okay, that's where that comes from.
Absolutely.
I mean, he didn't know what he was doing. Your dad didn't know
No,
necessarily.
he went out on his own, and
And would know what they're doing with us.
Oh, true.
As parents, and what that was going to lead to. They needed the help.
Yeah.
You know, they needed the help. Come on, and I needed to watch you.
I got to still get this job done.
Daycare. I got work. Perfect. It's a good setup. But you look back on that, and what's interesting that my brother, same kind of thing. No interest.
Yeah.
in that. Now he's an engineer. He outsources engineering services, but it's not a business.
Yeah.
It's not a business. And he had no like, I don't want to do that. But you get the bug, you get caught, and it's like, it's what I want to do.
Absolutely.
It's pretty cool. Well, yeah, that leads up. So get back onto where we were. It's 2016. New business owner now. 75% of the staff turns over
In the first 12 months. Yeah.
first 12 months.
My wife, I think we had our first son within 8 weeks of closing.
Yeah.
On the first business.
Yeah. Yeah. So they had a lot going on.
Yeah,
A
absolutely.
lot going on. So that's I think Kel, you're thinking about some questions around scary times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's always nice to talk about the things that happen when you purchase a business, because a lot of times people won't discuss the things that scared the crap out of them, or they won't discuss the hardships. They, of course, we want to celebrate the successes, but what were those on both sides? What were the scary times? What were the successes?
Man, in the first year, I think it's taken this time and reflection to know that, like, hey, we turned over all that staff and we were bulls in China shop. So at the time, I didn't have any fears in the first year, and it was right around 14 months later that we'd heard through one of our reps at this clinic, 45 minutes from us, in Cross Creek, was going to sell to a couple of attorneys in Chicago, and nothing against attorneys, but I thought, like, this is the worst thing ever. Why is this?
You can say
clinic
something
going-
about attorneys. It's okay.
why is it going to a couple of attorneys in Chicago? I was like, we can work together. We're 45, 50 minutes apart. We could share teams. They were at Fort Leonard Wood, which has a very different economy
Yeah.
than like the Ozarks. So
Absolutely does.
if there's a recession, oftentimes the base is stronger than all the vacation area that we were at like the Ozarks. So that was the part of the thesis. Man, we picked up the phone. Didn't know this owner at all. Hadn't met her in time. She was a remote owner, traveling the country in an RV.
Yeah.
Had 3 part-time doctors working there.
Yeah.
Had a technician or assistant that was doing all the management duties, but was still just an assistant. And so I literally got, she said, hey, I'm going to sign this contract this week. And I said, well, maybe I can sweeten it. If you send me all the stuff you shared, because you have all this ready if you sell them to attorneys, 3 years tax returns. You send me what their offer is, give me 24 hours. And I think it was 24, 48 hours, literally. And I called her back and I said, and I think at the same time, I also sent her our policy manual. I said, here's how we're going to take care of your team. Because I had asked her a couple questions on the phone, like her teams didn't have benefits. And I, sometimes it's a motivator for people.
This is your second acquisition.
Second acquisition.
Yep.
And so I wanted to make sure her team would be getting something out of it just from the fact of joining R Veterinary. And so I had conveyed that I thought we would be a better fit for their team than a couple of attorneys out of Chicago. And I turned around and I said, I think the offer's pretty fair. The only way I think I can sweeten it is if I'll put a revenue kicker on it. And so for the next 3 years, she earned 1% of gross revenue for each of the 3 years. So even though she wasn't there, she still encouragement to ensure that the part-time doctors, which weren't under contract, stayed around, and that we had a smooth transition because she had some skin in the game after the transaction.
Yeah.
And we closed on that practice, I want to say in like 27 days, 30 days. It was really tight window.
That was one of our first deals together there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, part of it was helping her understand she can go be independent financially, those kinds of things too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she it was quick closing because she financed a huge portion of the deal. But you had to get legal documents drawn up on loans and promissory notes and deeds of trust, and we rented the real estate at first, but we had a purchase option. And I remember the biggest challenge on that one coming up to the close date was nothing to do with the owner. It wasn't to do with our legal documents. They were all done in time. We couldn't get a sales tax license.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember what I had to do?
Is that got the rep involved? Was it?
Yeah. So, the state of Missouri says they shall issue you a sales tax license within 10 days of providing all the documentation.
Yeah.
I think we were 20-some days in, and so I think
Still hadn't got
we
it.
reached out to a couple of local reps.
Yeah.
state
State representatives.
representative.
Yeah.
Said, hey, are we supposed to lay everybody off next week when we close on this because we can't sell? And 24 hours later, we had a sales tax
license. Yeah.
You know,
But you're not the only one we've had to do that with client-wise. Even a year transition, like, yeah, just how it works apparently sometimes.
There's always something like that holds something up. Something small,
Yeah.
you can't schedule a time at the title, something like that.
That backs up that's not what you know, it's who you know. Connections matter.
and I don't know that I would even be afraid at this point to have gone forward to operate and to keep tack that
Right.
problem in the first 30 days, remit all the sales tax that's due.
Yes.
That's, if anybody was ever in that situation, that's kind of where I'd be.
Yeah, you got to keep running.
Yeah.
Figure it out as you go. As
Exactly.
a business owner. Yeah, it's not like you're
The state wants you to
operating
operate.
with a yeah. I mean, you've got doctors that are qualified. There's nothing wrong. I mean, everything's right. So it checks all the boxes. You just don't have this.
So you just talked about
piece of-
doctors.
piece
So
of
the
paper.
other odd one in Missouri is when you transition facility licenses,
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to transition that until the date of closing.
Right. Right.
And you can't open half of your merchant accounts until you have a facility license.
Right.
And so there you have this conundrum that, okay, now I'm going to need all these supplies immediately after we close.
Yeah.
And so we've worked a lot of times with the sellers like, hey, we're going to keep ordering, we tell them all, we're going to keep ordering on your accounts. We're going to try, you're going to print out these invoices, we're going to print them out, and we're going to do a true up every 30 days. And we just cut them a check for the materials we bought through their accounts.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Kelly, you asked about the successes and scary moments, and when the business is running, and like we don't even have it bought yet. Can't we even run it?
Well, there you go.
We can't buy any drugs under. Yeah.
But I think that being a business owner is taking risks, calculated risks, taking risks to go is if I didn't have that sales tax, I'm gonna still collect sales tax. I'm not gonna hide anything.
Yep.
Maybe I get in a little trouble because I didn't have that, but they're gonna get their money. It's not like I'm doing anything I'm not stealing.
Yeah.
I'm not evading anything here. I'm gonna keep going, and that's part of being a business owner. To go, people look at us and go, "You're crazy."
This is a reasonable risk.
Yeah, but people look at it and go, "You're crazy. You don't have that paper. You're crazy." Well, why?
Well, what's the alternative though? Are you gonna not pay half your staff or all of your staff to go home and feed their families too? I mean, no
Right.
one really wants that to happen.
No.
Yeah.
That's not the ideal goal for anybody. It's
Yeah.
just timing of paperwork.
Absolutely. No, it's. I think what I was looking at too is a couple things. One is that we talked about it. Up here it says for privately owned practices. And I want to differentiate something real important because you have 8 practices.
That's right.
They're privately owned.
That's correct.
It's not private equity. It's not other people's money. It's you and Katie.
Absolutely. We've not.
So
We've turned down offers. We do not want. We could be sitting on a beach somewhere with some of the offers we got last year
Right.
floated to us.
Right.
That's not what we want to do.
Yeah.
Go back to our original goal
Yeah.
of building something really big. We enjoy what we do every day. My wife works 6 days a week. I'm often working 6 days a week. It's part of our life. It's part of who we are.
Yeah. It's I mean, we have the same thing here. It's I've shared this story, I think, on this podcast maybe too many times, but I think it's worth talking about. It's, I've had private equity people go, "You're not buying practices?" to me. And, I'm like, "No, like I don't get it. Like, you're helping them?" I'm like, "Yeah." I like,
You make a lot more money if you bought them.
yeah, I'm like, I whatever. There's also purpose in life. And I think what I was looking at, if I was trying to pull this up here, you're in LX Council. I was in LX Council, which is a peer share group amongst business owners. And, who put that on? Tina Corner, who's done she's got a heck of a business going
All over the country.
Mastermind groups is what
Absolutely.
what it's about. And you got an award for the MVP. Says that Jim embodies a spirit of collaboration and community, consistently offering invaluable insights, support, and guidance. Your dedication and positive impact on fellow members set a shining example for us all. That's what I love about I love hanging out and talking to you and seeing how you operate, because you'll have somebody that's another veterinarian. I don't call them competitor. It's another veterinarian down the street.
Literally down the street.
Yep.
We sit next to each other at DVM Partners.
And you sit next to each
Yeah.
other and you share still, because it's about the private practice owner being successful,
That's right.
and you're not in competition with each other.
I get asked all the time when I'm down in the community, out in the community in Lake of the Ozarks, and I'm proud to say that I would take my pets to any of the vets in our community.
Yeah.
We all have a little bit different style
Right.
that fits with different customers, but they're all excellent doctors.
Yeah.
And we do better if we all work I think a successful business, a profitable business, and we're not chewing on each other. I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, it's great to purpose. And I mean, you've worked on your core values, your culture, all those things that prove that, I mean, you want to grow a business, right? But it's be privately owned, offer a great culture for people, a different way that's not, you're not buying it to flip it.
That's right. I mean, you guys help us look at things on the big picture, like how do we compare to AHA? And, all the time I'm shocked by what we spend on our labor and benefits proportion. I mean, I think last I looked at 47%.
Yeah, it's up there.
Which
right?
is,
Yeah.
your
Which is
goal might be like 40, 42 or something, right?
Yeah, it depends.
Depends on what's in it.
Depends, yeah.
We have a lot in it, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
But you're investing in
I'm not
people.
beholden to some group of investors. I'm happy if I turn enough profit to pay our notes.
Right.
Turn enough profit to be bankable. So in general, we've stated our goal is 15%.
Mm-hmm.
We've typically returned 10%.
Yeah. On net profit.
Yep, net profit.
Yeah.
And if we were over 15, we will share it back to our team
I love that.
in the form of 401k profit sharing.
Mm-hmm. Which is
Haven't been there yet, but
Yeah.
someday we probably will.
No, you will. You will. You'll have that. And I love hearing that because when we talk about metrics, we just came off of 2 parts of the profit and loss metric side versus the, we use a period total reports map and mark. Everyone knows around here what that is. And to look at it and go, these metrics are different for everybody. The question is, what is your net income goal? And you can get there differently. It's like you're buying products at a better price than a lot of people because you're negotiating. I mean, you do have power of multiple practices, but most people can negotiate with their vendors for better pricing
That's right.
and get that done. So you're able to do that. And instead of you pocketing that, you're going, I want to support my staff and my team because in the veterinary practice and in our business here, that's our assets.
It is.
That's the most important. Any business, people are the most important part. And so that's
And if you can,
really good to see.
you create a moat around yourself if you can have a differentiated salary or compensation level or
Yeah.
benefits within your organization.
Yeah, for sure. I think, Kel, you're thinking about that on the, going from 1 practice to 2 practices, like that structure of that organization.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I was excited for you to talk about is like you said, the first clinic you bought, you were probably making almost all the decisions, you and Dr. Katie, and you go to 1. Okay, now we have
They
2.
were the only 2 there for a minute. It sounds like.
It's yeah. I mean, there was a time where it was just 2 of you. So
Jim's drawing blood. He's checking people out. He's taking the trash out.
Hey, before we had kids, I went on emergencies all the time.
receptionist, tech, all the stuff. But no, I mean, talk about going from 1 to 2 to 5. What is the organization level that you would have to where, okay, now I can't answer all these questions or I need somebody to help me, and what does that look like building up to that?
I think there's some natural pieces that you either want to find a good partner to outsource to, or you want to build your own back office. I mean, DVM Office does a great job. You guys are helping people with payroll. If you think about all these clinics, they're surviving on their own, and so how do we let them continue to survive? Keep some of their existing values. Hopefully, bring in more benefits. Bring in some of the better pricing. It's a weird amalgamation because, unlike a lot of venture capital who go buy clinics and they sit behind a DBA or that existing local LLC, we are one company.
I like it.
We started. The second acquisition was 2. Within 12 months, we had rolled them together and said, we are all here to succeed or fail together. We are one company, and I would argue we're stronger for it. And so we've actually we rebranded 3 or 4 years into R Veterinary at the lake, or R Veterinary at Cross Creek. And that's hard because, yes, people are like, oh, I'm losing some of my identity. But at the same time, I think it's important to be honest to our customers. You are dealing with the R Veterinary team. If I have a team and a practice manager that is struggling in one location, it's very important that my other practice managers, myself, my back office, all help them do better because that reflects on us as well. And so we all work together as a team. And so you talk about building, all these clinics have somebody who's doing like a practice manager role. And oftentimes we see that, if you list out the maybe 20, 30 services that they could be providing. Some are doing payroll, some are not. An accountant's doing it. Some are doing inventory, some are not. Some are doing hiring and firing, or some of that is being done by the local doctor. And so usually it's a slight transition. Shelley Gage is the practice manager. She's been there for 10 years down at Kirbyville. More recently, she's getting more exposure to hiring, firing, reprimanding, payroll decisions where she didn't have clarity into that. On the converse, we are handling a lot of AP in the back office because that's something that we can automate and we can do. We cannot spend as much labor and time on by working with our partnered vendors.
Right.
So
more streamlined billing.
Yeah, and so that's just it. My back office is small. I mean, we've got partners. We use you guys for our 401k. We have Samantha Emery, who's critical, helps me run not just R Veterinary, but a total of 4 businesses right now. We do all of our bookkeeping. We have amazing partners in Williams Keepers that are our public accountants here in Columbia. So again, it's that small little team. I think I saw the other day that Warren Buffett's office is 25 people or something.
Right.
It doesn't have to be massive. And we need to empower those people that are in the roles locally to make good decisions and let them make good decisions. And if they fall and trip and make a bad decision, we educate on it. Don't, that's, if it was done with the right intent and with the, it wasn't done with malice or malintent, then there's nothing wrong with that. Let's learn from it. I have certainly made mistakes. I talked about mine in the first year. After 2 acquisitions, I would say for about an 18-month period, I kind of got decision paralysis. We had what are our 2 largest clinics now, probably our largest profit generators. And I was afraid to make a change, and that became like this spring that wound up because there's change that needed to happen. And I'm like, well, I got this revenue. I don't want to touch anything because I might screw up the revenues coming. It's paying my bills, and at this point, I don't know if we're $4 or $5 million in debt, and on all these practices, I'm thinking, I just need that to work forever.
Right.
But it's not going to work forever, and by letting that build up, it caused the changes to be more dramatic at the end. So I think the inability to make a decision is hard for an entrepreneur, and you need to make a decision, and you also need to be willing to walk it back and say, hey, we made a mistake.
Right.
We went to a payroll provider, Zenefits. I'm going to throw their name out there. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
It was horrible.
Right.
And in 7 months, we pulled it off. I think in a 12-month period, we went through 3 different timekeeping and payroll services. We've been where we're at now for 3 or 4 years, but that was painful trying to choose what was right, and we get sold a bill of goods, and that's not what we get. And I'm moving, 40, 50 employees around, and they're getting frustrated that, I got to learn another one for the 3rd time this year.
Yeah.
To track my time.
Well, it's costing you time and energy. You're not calculating. So the costs on that
are significant.
Who knows? It's significant, right?
I don't think I can calculate them.
No, but
it's there.
It costs.
Yeah.
It costs opportunity and even the happiness for an employee of that day, of their performance that day.
Yeah.
So it all matters. One thing I love about your structure is the practice manager side. I think that's one of the hardest positions in a veterinary practice. And the reason I say that is because in an individual practice, the veterinary business owner is so busy being a veterinarian, and maybe they don't have the business skills they need. So how does that person ever train that practice manager to really be a practice manager? They get called a practice manager, but they might even be doing half-time vet tech.
Yep.
And really what they're doing over here is putting the hours or payroll or whatever that is, or billing, but not managing. They're not managing. So your practice managers, you'll be able to get a system where they can actually manage.
Well, so we're stripping away some of the mundane things. So, they have to approve timesheets, but it shouldn't be 4 hours of data entry to get it done. They should be, hey, did you guys update your timesheets? Are you good to submit? I got a flag here. Let me address you. Managing that employee, like, hey, we got tardiness or we got those other issues. Talked about AP and all that stuff, trying to get that in the back office so that they aren't having to deal with it. We still have room for improvement.
Sure.
And then, more recently,
you always do.
I had valued my coaching that I got from you guys. That we sat down, we talked, and now we're getting coaching from you guys straight to our practice managers.
Yeah.
to help them be better managers, and it's important that they get that, and so that's been huge for us.
Yeah. No, and I really, because we have plenty of clients that want to practice manager, but it's like you got to get your stuff right before you can even get that practice manager to be successful.
And they got to be comfortable to give up some of that control.
Exactly.
And I think that's a hard place. I mean, I've struggled with that over the years, and I've spoke to it 2 or 3 times here, but I've even caught myself like, okay, that's not how I would have done it, but it's not that big of a deal that I need to go make a big deal about it.
Yeah.
So, it's of this size. They use their best judgment, and so I really try to check myself on when is it important enough to draw it back and say, here's how I would shape your decision making process differently, or they really didn't do anything wrong. It's just not how I would have done it.
Yeah.
Hey,
Here's this popped in my mind just thinking about management and difficulties with multiple locations. Talk about software.
No, it's for first few we switched around. We were on Cornerstone to start with at Lake of the Ozarks. They had been on it since it was on floppy drives. PSI, I think is what it was called. Green screen, DOS. I mean, so it had been there for a long time ago. Yeah. It was paper based, so they still had files for every client, and so we switched. I think we switched to Impromed. We evaluated just about everything in 2017, and there were some cloud providers, but no one was just really stand out. It was still, that was half a decade ago.
Yeah.
And so we switched to Impromed, thinking, hey, there's a big provider. They're an independent company. We like it. Within 18 months, they went to Covetrus, and no matter what, the service changed.
Yeah.
It wasn't the same. We didn't have the same developers. We don't have the same access to our data that we used to have.
Right.
The SQL database has been locked down. I mean, that's our customers' data. That's our responsibility to keep safe for our customers. We don't, in my opinion, I don't even own that data. I mean, yes, it's ours, it's collected, but we are stewards of that data for our customer.
Right.
And I would like to serve it up to them.
You own your sales data. You own your what service did I
yeah.
sell? That kind of stuff. You're talking about
Medical records, vaccine records.
Yeah.
It should be easy for customers to be able to get their data. They paid you for a service. They paid you to generate those records.
Absolutely.
I get aggravated when I go to the hospital and I can't get records. We don't have HIPAA in the same level, and so we need to verify who it is. But
it's important to the health of the animal for easy access to that information if another provider's providing
it's
that.
important for the value of the relationship. What if you're traveling with your animal and you need to go to another practitioner so that you can fill a medicine that you left at home?
Yeah.
Oftentimes they got to see them, but having some record is important. And you can often get that on a phone call, but why shouldn't it be easier? And so we've operated 5 clinics now on Impromed, and they share a database. We have a couple clinics on Cornerstone again. We've bought them. We keep looking around, but I've got a top tier of cloud providers I like. EasyVet I think would be great for multi-practice, but we don't like how they handle some of the data and how they limit our access through APIs, and so
Encrypt the back end.
Yep. Yeah. And so I don't know if we'll tackle it, but it's always been a dream of mine to potentially build some of our own solutions.
I had no idea. We've been talking about that since 2017.
Well, and we started on the back end, just like you guys have started. We're kind of on these divergent paths, but we're tackling the same thing. All these clinics have all these receipts, and you deal with clients that, at the end of the year, they got a shoebox, or each month they got a folder of here's what I bought this month. And it might get entered at a high level, like, oh, well, we spent this much with this Patterson, or this much with Zoetis, or this much with BI. You don't know what the product was. You don't know what class it falls in under AHA. And so we've both been working on ways to get that data from our vendor in formats that help us class it uniformly across all our practices. We don't touch it.
We don't touch it.
Yeah.
Let the computer do it.
2 years ago, I sat down and wrote a program that took our MWI invoices and processes them into our QuickBooks.
Yeah.
All we have to do is download it. So I have an employee that spends, some time each day downloading maybe the dozen invoices we generate each day with MWI.
Yeah.
But then within 5 hours, they're in QuickBooks and we can move on. And so I know what my costs are oftentimes before I've imported even the revenue from the system.
Right. Well, and when you're running multiple locations too, you're able to look at percentages of each category to see, like, are there discrepancies, are they on track, or what they're doing, which is huge, not just by sales, labor, expenses. You're looking
Well,
deeper.
so to speak of that, Lynn Creek used to be walk-in. We transitioned to appointment based last year. I think as a demand of the staff, and that we needed to improve the way we are. It was too demanding on our team with this employee shortage. So we went to appointment based, but we still see a lot of patients that we're willing to hospitalize and we're seeing overnight. So we have hospitalization charges, fluid charges, and then I go look at other hospitals we have, and those lines are very minuscule. We don't do a lot of it, and it might be appropriate. We have a clinic in Fenton, Missouri. The best care is to say, hey, you should go to VSS. They are
Right.
monitored 24 hours.
Right.
And my wife often says that to patients that are calling in. She still answers the phone 24/7. She's the only doctor at our Lake Clinic that does it.
Yeah.
That's fine. We've come to terms with that.
Yeah.
But she offers a lot of triage, and it's often saying, hey, you should go somewhere where you have that 24-hour monitoring, because if I go in, I might stabilize, but I'm going to go home. I got to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or I got to take my kids to school, or
Right.
I've got a baseball practice.
Yeah.
And we have a life too.
Yeah.
So
So talk about a little bit like data breakouts. What are we spending? What are we making? When you go to look at a practice that you might potentially partner with, how important is having the data to know, like, hey, they're spending this much money on this % of revenues wise, and talk about that a little bit.
It would be nice to see more data on the revenue side. Most of what we see is literally lumped into one or two numbers coming over from the practice management software. I've learned to live with that, so I would love to see it, and I could tell you how well it affects my decision. So we're diving into that software to maybe understand, are they undercharging for things, and so that can be hard to get just out of the P&L. On the expense side, though, it is important. So we want to know, what are we spending on different classes of staff? If is this kennel staff? Is this assistants and technicians and RVTs? Is this CSRs? Is this doctors? Is this ownership? And is the ownership doing doctor duties? Is the ownership doing practice duties, management duties? Because ultimately, specifically with ownership, we try to pull that back out and say, if that owner was gone tomorrow, what would it take for me to replace that position? And sometimes it's like management duties are probably going to go to a practice manager. So we might spend more with somebody who's already doing a little bit of management in the clinic and have an official practice manager. Doctors, it's a challenge to hire doctors, and we're in the six figures even for new hires, and I think that's good. It's been a great change.
Well, they're coming out with the debt, and plus the training.
$300,000. We should be that way.
I mean,
There's nothing wrong with it.
They're doctors.
But when we go look at a practice and the existing doctors paying themselves $60,000 a year, which I've seen not too long ago, and they say, "Hey, I'm making $50,000 profit a year." Well, that's about what it might even be shy of what it takes to replace you as a doctor.
Right.
And so
It's not profitable.
you really don't have profit.
No.
You own a job, which is fine. It's not that. I mean,
Lifestyle.
my father's in that. He doesn't like having employees. He likes. I got a job. He works 80 hours a week. He loves making his choices.
Yeah.
It works for him.
Yeah. Lifestyle choices. It gets back to what you want to do. Now, I think what's interesting on that too is not only what you look for the numbers, but did you have an ideal practice you look for? Is there a category of practice that you say that's something I'm interested in?
Oh, this makes me think back. I mean, there used to be a time when I'd say, like, I'll go look at anything.
Yeah.
We've been to Florida and looked at a few in Fort Myers. We've primarily stayed in the state of Missouri. Have a few outside the state that we've looked at or are looking at.
Yeah.
Over the last 3 or 4 years, it's been really hard to look at anything more than like 3 or 4 doctors because there's so much competition. We are not at the same multiple as venture capital,
Right.
partly because of how we're going to operate differently afterwards. We're not expecting the same return that they're going to expect on it.
Right.
But I think we provide a better environment for the team afterwards. So that's a balance. And so that relegates me to looking at 1 to 3 doctor practices typically.
Right.
Oftentimes we're looking for practices that we feel, if it's a 1 doctor practice, I've got to have like a second factor in there that I feel, hey, this could support 2 or 3 doctors. Like maybe the building was built large enough. It has 4 or 5 exam rooms. It's 6,000 square feet. Okay, well, maybe we'll go buy the real estate. That's a bigger part of the investment. And our thesis is that we'll bring another doctor in, which is challenging in this market.
Yes.
And so then often we're looking at, if it's a single doctor, like 3 to 5 year retention time, so that gives us time for us to pay you what we feel is a reasonable price on your profit and time stability to transfer the risk of finding a doctor from you to us. because that's oftentimes the boat that a lot of these single doctor practices are in. Like, hey, we're looking for a doctor. We've been looking for 3 years.
Yeah.
So looking at this before the day you want to retire, I think is important. If you're a small practice, I think looking at cleaning up your financials. Kale,
Yep.
you've worked with several people on that, and you're active. It's a process. How long does it take?
Oh, I mean,
It's 2 years,
that's a loaded question. I mean, it takes a lot. It depends, right? I
6
mean,
months.
I
depends.
sound like somebody that's trying to explain how you make money with cattle. It depends, but like, it can be. Are you running your some personal expenses through there? Like, how do we separate that? Because a lot of times people don't recognize the severity of having $10,000 of personal expenses that might be business, but maybe really isn't in the P&L. How that can affect the value of the
when
practice.
you talk about that, I don't even care that it's in there if you can accurately identify it and provide the supporting documents. So I am not the IRS. I'm not here to report to you,
And
what
neither-
you do
neither are
with,
we.
yeah, exactly. And whatever you do with your accountant and stuff and however you claim that. But if you happen to have a cell phone because you answer the call all the time, but your whole family is on the plan and you've decided to run that through the business, that's your decision. But if you can point that out to me, I'll put it in as an ad bag.
Yeah, but a lot of times in evaluation, that dollar can get taken times 5 or 7, right?
Absolutely.
And so for the at least 3 years leading up to maybe selling your practice, it's worth making sure that those expenses are split out. And when you get the P&L to look at it and to say, I think I can offer this, it's a more realistic look at what the practice is actually performing in, and probably constitutes a better offer.
So you just mentioned
because
multiples.
it's categorized. Yeah.
I would argue that multiples aren't flat. There's, so number of doctors you have, the retention of those doctors, just basically how good is the going concern? How well is it going to be easy is it going to be to keep this business going? But if you have a higher profit, that would be one thing that would actually drive the multiple up as well.
Mhm.
So a lower profit actually pulls down the multiple. So it's a compounding effect
Right.
to put it in there.
What's interesting too is that buying a business, it's sometimes like you don't want to buy an optimized business either.
True.
Because there may not be opportunity. You're buying it at its peak.
You maybe described me a little bit there.
That's the truth too. You want to be able to find opportunity in that business to take it to the next level.
I think that's the difference between venture capital. Venture capital is looking for that gross revenue number and how they get valuation.
Right.
And so they're more comfortable with buying places that are at the peak
Mm-hmm.
versus, I think someone in my shoes. I'll reflect back. You guys see my financials.
Mm-hmm.
Our single doctor practices, I think they both lost money last year.
Mm-hmm.
We carry them. It's because there's a thesis that we can bring additional doctors in. It's fun to operate a business out of town.
Real estate
help out
plays
with it.
sometimes too, right?
Yeah, help out with the management of it, not really get any cost covered in our back end office, and still lost $10,000 on a $900,000 revenue business.
Yeah.
Because the real loss is probably $20,000-$30,000 in back office expense, and
Yeah.
so it's not.
It's a commitment to the longer term.
It is. I'm very long term, as we just already
It's an
talked.
investment.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That might be a good segue to what you talked about earlier. You made the comment you shouldn't get into business without knowing how you're going to get out. And so, do you want to talk a little bit about your vision as to maybe when you started? Did you always want to own multiple? What was that vision, and maybe how that's changed looking at it over time?
So yeah, the business person in me that Stephen talked about earlier, after that first one, I'm like, well, that was pretty. Even though we were going through of all this change, we're like, that was pretty easy. We should do it again. Within like 3 months, I was thinking that. And so, and then the engineer in me, I see all these things in the back, and I'm like, that cost will stay the same whether we have a business that does $2 million a year or a business that does $20 million a year.
Right.
I like that cost staying the same. I can scale, and that's what scale is.
Yeah.
And it's not the same metric as like scaling a software company. You talk about huge multiples there, but
Right.
there's still scale that happens in the veterinary world of operating multiple clinics if you can keep from doubling all your cost each time you double your clinics. I think if I recall back to some of our early planning documents, I think I threw out, well, I'm going to have 300 practices.
Yeah.
And here I am at 8. I want to say that goal shifted a little bit when we started considering out of state and the challenges of just operating at a larger geography.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we go to Fenton right now, which is a 3.5 hour drive to us. We serve some clients on the wholesale side that are 4 hours from us. That's about as far as I want to go until I get my airplane.
Yeah.
You know, that it's hard to manage at distance, and so we're really working on our back office systems. How do we really, you know, this whole past year and a half, 2 years has been about empowering the practice managers so they can be their local leaders. You know, rewarding them more, pulling back on our office staff. So if we can keep our office staff exactly flat, and everything we do is from a mindset of how can we handle 5 more clinics and not spend another dime on our back office because we're efficient at what we do.
You're talking about your office down Lynn Creek that
Yeah.
houses that administrative staff, if you will.
Yeah, 4 people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they have capacity to do more.
if we build the tools right, and so, yeah, the goal has always been huge. The goal has always been to do it independently,
Right.
by ourselves.
Right.
We could do it quicker. We could be at 300. I mean, there's been times where Adventure Camper said, "Hey, let's
Other
partner.
people's money, right?
You can be the Missouri leader
Yeah.
for this company."
Yeah.
And it's attractive, but I like being my own boss.
Mhm.
I like being only beholden to myself, and in a way, we're still beholden to the bank, so we got to turn a profit margin.
Sure.
They like to see our financials every quarter now,
Yeah.
but being beholden to myself, if I turn a 7% profit, which we have, that's just enough to cover the debt service. You know, my wife makes a fair salary for the same as our other doctors.
Yeah.
I think I make a fair salary. It's not even in the 6 figures.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I don't.
you might think I don't make enough. I don't know. But part of that is we're empowering our team downstream to make decisions. I don't have as much weight as I used to on my shoulders, which has allowed me to continue to focus on growing. So instead of 300 practices, it's now I want to be the largest employer in our county, you know, and that competes with the hospital, Lake Regional Hospital, at 1,200 employees,
Right.
and we're at 120. So
Right.
I got to go tenfold,
Yeah.
which we'll get there. And
Yeah.
they're not all going to be in the county, but how, you know, something I ask myself all the time is why not us?
Mhm.
You know, you read a story on CNBC or you read about a startup company in Silicon Valley, and they started in a garage.
Yeah.
And there's expertise around there that makes maybe technology companies go quicker out there, and that's appropriate. But, you know, MWI, AmerisourceBergen, before they were bought by AmerisourceBergen, is out of, I think, Boise, Idaho. And it was started by a gentleman who was buying goods, and they had thresholds. And he said, well, if I could hit that threshold, then I could help resell it to my local area.
Mhm.
He said, why not me?
Yeah.
I can do this.
Yeah.
And so he built an amazing big business off of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to do the same.
That's a
You know,
it's a
we have,
great question. Why not me?
you know, 80% of our employees are in veterinary, but we also employ 2 full-time construction/maintenance workers that are doing capital improvements to our facilities. We have a crematory that we acquired with
Yeah.
our third
Yeah.
practice.
Where's the
They're
working
right
on,
there.
working on paw prints and things, right?
Yeah, so we do clay paws, which is real common. So we've been thinking out of the box for probably 4 years now.
That's the one right there in the. Grab that one, Kale.
This guy.
Yeah, that's the one.
This one?
You know, so
Yeah.
we wanted to do a 3D paw print that was milled out of walnut or oak. So we have 3D scanners, like you talk about $30,000 scanner to scan a paw. But it's just, you know, really trying to figure out a different way to do things. And
That's an actual paw print.
yeah, we've not succeeded. I mean, this is a success, but it's not where we want to be. We want to be 3D. But this is an actual paw print from a dog.
Yeah.
We're taking it, we're computerizing it, we're then running it through a mill. Then we're filling it in with epoxies. We're working on some different stains, we're in different fonts. So this is really early.
Yeah.
But for me, you know, if as a memorial for my dog, I would love to have this on my desk, you know, or something I can hang on my wall. It's just a different product.
Yeah.
I mean, for some people, they want the feel of the clay. They can feel the 3D. I absolutely understand that.
Yeah.
But we want to expand our offering and fill the need. So we're getting into woodworking. That led me to talking to my neighbor who manufactures furniture in Eldon, Missouri. And so I'm now a partner in Argosy Console Inc. and 22 employees. We make recording studio furniture. Here we're in this beautiful recording studio. We're going to have to hook you up with a desk. We're going to get something a lot better than that.
You know, hey, you got a problem with Jeff Bezos?
Yes, yes. So again, it's always about, for me, tackling new problems, and this team is, I think, by the end of the month, they hope to make this product available to our wholesale customers. So we serve about a dozen private veterinary clinics in Missouri.
Yeah.
And so I
Above and beyond yours?
yeah, above us, they
yeah.
are our customer, and we
Yeah.
provide crematory service. We provide paw prints, urns. We have it here local. We serve the University of Missouri currently. That's an open bid process every few years.
Yeah.
This all came from acquiring our third practice in Columbia. It was Columbia Pet Hospital.
Yep.
The owners weren't practicing as doctors. Talk about a
We could use a whole episode on
Oh
that.
yeah, there was some missteps, and their doctors that they had there had heard through the grapevine the sale was taking place, but they weren't. No one communicated.
Yeah.
And so these doctors, come to find out after we closed, they had both taken other jobs. It almost scuttled the whole deal. The value went down.
Side, right? Is that Neil's?
No,
No.
one of them went to work at.
They were already gone. Neil's
yep.
were already gone. They had worked there before. They had trail
So this is
side.
we didn't even get to
That's right.
employ these doctors. They were out literally like the week before closing was supposed to happen, and it affected the closing valuation. Because I said, I'm not going to pay for no doctors.
Yeah.
And so I think we paused the deal, and we worked together to find a relief doctor so we could continue.
Yeah.
But they had a crematory, and they were serving several clients. Apologize.
Good.
And then the question I didn't ask is she was running that, but she was going in there at 2 a.m.
She was running 24 hours a
six
day.
times a day just to
She
keep
was
up with the
working
volume she
24 hours
had.
a day.
So that was a rocky road. We actually let some business go. We didn't bid on the university contract the next cycle, because we had less volume,
Right.
and we could keep doing it right.
Yeah.
We went and got new equipment, spent $500,000 on a building and a large crematory, and now we have the capacity to serve probably another 24 clinics. And so we operate.
COVID was
Yeah, it was a challenge.
COVID and getting the actual the crematory machine, right? Getting all that. Yeah.
So that's a decent part of our overall business, and that's us working with other independent veterinarians. And here we are, just out of passion. We've not recouped any revenue on the probably $30,000-$40,000 we've invested in this process over the last 3-4 years, but it's furthering our industry. I would take that example and say most innovation actually happens in private practice on how we do things, not in these big corporations. They just want to mimic what each other or what is getting them, the dollars in the short term. It's the long term thinking of how do we serve our customers differently.
Yeah. Big word, innovation. That comes from, you talked about MWI's founder, small business owner, thinking, why not me?
Yeah.
And that doesn't come out of that kind of corporate structure that we're talking about, the private equity. Private equity's innovation is, how much can we squeeze to turn to sell it to the next person that's looking for a little less return than we're getting, but give us a bunch. It's what it is.
They want the cash flow.
They want the cash flow.
Yeah.
Different return metric. It's pretty wild.
So when you think about rolling up to a bit like some of the corporates do, you get a bunch of practices you sell up. For people that are passionate about independent businesses, like we all are, even intern Dan over here owns his own business. So, but it's what would you do if you did that? There's so many studies that say just because you got a big check now, just playing golf and doing some things isn't fulfilling, right? We all get fulfilled by furthering business.
You might like playing golf, but this is my passion.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Kale loves playing golf once a year at the Catherine tournament.
That's my point. Is it's important to have a passion. That's what we're all here for, is to further businesses.
I have a deal that's supposed to close tomorrow. It looks like it's going to get pushed a week or two. It's fine. It's part of the process. It's invigorating. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's challenging. For me, it's rarely a sleepless night. People are like, well, how do you do that? I'm fine. I sleep like a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wake up. I've got a new challenge. But I love the teams. And so, again, more and more, it's been about finding a good team to join.
Right.
And not just a business to buy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. It's in the initial part, you probably had sleepless nights with this turnover in the first one, that kind of stuff. Right. I mean, there are some nerves there, but as you grow a business and you get it to a certain point, you're able to slow down and think a lot better, which helps that out. And you can also go, I don't need this deal, too. Like when you first start a business, you're kind of like,
I need cash flow.
come on. And so you're like, you make decisions based on
that. Yeah.
cash flow, and you might get some wrong
But
clients.
I'm rarely answering the phone as a CSR up at the front desk anymore, which I did in the first year.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I have that. You talk about freeing up time.
Yeah.
I get to think more strategically, big picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. I think that's what
It's absolutely
your
fun.
passion is what you really, because it allows you to innovate and think and do those things, which is, what Kale we're talking about. It's golf and all stuff's kind of fun, but which is a challenge, but different kind of challenge. It's not it's not bringing the people impact that we're all talking about with private business to inspire the next, the next R Veterinary small business person that does what you did in a different way kind of deal, right? The next who that is that says, I'm going to privately own multiple practices.
Yeah.
And so that's why I love having you on today, because you said that on a lot of the Facebook veterinary social groups, you're seeing a lot of people saying, I want to start a practice.
It's amazing. The last 6 months, I feel lots of new startups going, and some of them have been going for a while because, there's a build process and stuff, but I'm seeing lots of photos of vacated spaces that they're putting together. It's double-edged. I'm also seeing lots of closures, lots of stuff come up for sale. If you haven't operated with a profit. So it's important just for your own livelihood and your own sustainability of your own practice that you operate with good metrics and what value you provide so that you can be there tomorrow to keep operating. Because it's sad when I talk to a veterinarian that it can't, they're currently paying themselves, $60,000 a year again. I'm using back to this example.
Doing $1 million reduction or something like
they're,
that.
They're,
Right?
they have this great team, but they haven't changed anything.
Yeah.
And they're still using prices from 10 years ago. And they may be happy, and that's fine, but they get more and more stressed out as that margin gets tighter and tighter because their own life expenses have gone up. They're not paying themselves a fair wage. And oftentimes they're paying their team a fair wage because that's what they have to. There's more, but they're tied to it themselves, and so they're not taking a check. And I can't say that I haven't been there intermittently. I mean, I think we spoke in our prep here that even last year I took we pay ourselves twice a month. I took a month without pay. Not because the business wasn't profitable. We didn't have the cash flow.
Yeah.
And it's easier for me to cut that back and then reintroduce it than
Sounds like I
affect
bought too much
anything else.
inventory that month.
Winter's hard.
No, I know. Well, that's I think
we never lay anybody off.
People probably don't understand is that where your locations, some of the locations are at, are seasonal too. So,
our main location's very seasonal.
Yeah, where you're at's where I grew up, and our business was seasonal. Yeah, my same thing. It was in the winter. Dad and I kind of looking at, we're not laying anybody off.
Yeah.
They're full time. We don't need those hours right now, but
you want to keep them on.
Keep 'em on.
It's your team. It's your culture.
Yeah, I understand. My dad was always anxious at Christmas. I was like, why is
Makes
he always?
Christmas
Why is he
bonuses
always?
hard. January, February, real tight, and then we get to we're in May already this year, but in April, I think we laid out and purchased $350,000 to hit some annual goals that we have with some of our vendors.
Helps you get your pricing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had to be prepared to do that. We have to understand our inventory and our sales to know that we don't think we'll expire that product.
Right.
We're going to use this in the next 3 to 4 months. But payroll is for us these days is $200,000 to $300,000 every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then so.
Yeah.
I say that to a lot of people, and even just the big numbers can freak people out. I say this to people, and they're like, they just blows their mind.
I think it's relative.
Yes, and so you've worked in it with your dad.
Yeah, it's relative.
And you got more comfortable.
Yeah.
As you spent more time there.
Yeah.
I would imagine Jeff Bezos is much more comfortable with different payroll numbers.
Yeah, he's a little different, or Walmart, or
yeah. But I'm a big fan of Elon Musk and Tesla, but they just laid off 10% of their workforce. I don't want to ever be in that position as a company. So I may not achieve that childhood dream of thinking I'm going to be a millionaire. That's fine. I'm finding my limits in that it's for me, the team is more important.
Right.
You know, I have been fearful. Like, we have a couple single doctor practices. My wife is busy. We'd like to get her to the point where she's like the relief doctor for all the practices, and so she can fill in for, you know, all the sick time or CE. And we still do a lot of fill in, and that's why she does work 6 days a week. At the same time, you know, it is fearful if we were to lose a doctor on a short notice. Like, how do I keep that team?
Yeah.
And how long do I keep that team? We've sat down and done the math before. Like, okay, you know, because that team is also what you need to bring it back online, to, you know, to find a doctor. You know, it even made me realize, like, okay, well, we have to be more competitive in our compensation, which means we have to raise our pricing structure so that we can be more competitive.
Yeah.
Because if the dollars aren't in the bank, you can't pay it.
Right. Right. Well, and it's I think what the important thing is getting the pricing right. Is what that it's not when you say raising, it's not about like raising prices for it's getting the pricing right. I mean, heck, look at a 12-pack of Coke where it is priced today versus 10 years ago.
Yeah.
No one says
or a value meal at McDonald's.
Yeah.
You know, $17.
What you don't want to do, which Coke hasn't done because it's still the same size can, is you don't want to be the bag of chips or the cereal, where they raise the price and shrink what's inside the box. You know, I mean, you're trying to it's like I want to provide better service. I want to do all these things. So it's a different metric than,
you know, and some of that comes from doing a better job of conveying the value that the customer's getting. You know, the first clinic we had that my wife was adamant about buying, and I'd been in there a lot, helping her in the evenings on emergencies. It was it was walk in. You could come in and get a $16 rabies shot, not pay an examination fee, but the doctor is still expected to make sure the patient's healthy.
you have to.
You know, VCPR.
Yeah.
You know, you might opt to get a lepto, you might opt to get a distemper parvo, but you just got a $16. That's all I want is to be compliant and have my rabies.
Yeah.
It happened, and so we weren't doing a good job educating our clients on the benefits of these others. We weren't communicating how we were evaluating. Like, Katie's, you know, they might think that Katie's just petting their dog and playing with it, but Katie's feeling the joints for joint deformities and palpating the stomach for, you know, hernias and other things. Just like every other doctor,
time
you know.
and talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting. Jim Schisler was in yesterday, and we're just talking best practices. And thinking about that vaccine deal, I think it's because we as humans are so used to just going to, you know,
Walmart.
health clinic or Walmart or whatever and just getting the stab and leaving.
Yeah.
That's not the same in the veterinary space. So when you talk about communication, it's like, hey, I know as a human, you're probably what you should say is like, I know you're used to just getting a stab and going.
Yep.
But you know how you feel when you come in. The animal smiling at you when even they're hurting. You know, this may not be a right time to give that shot, so we have to have an exam to make sure it's the right time for that. Humans are different. You come in, you're like, you don't look good.
Yeah, you shouldn't have this right now.
Yeah,
come back in 2
but the
weeks.
dog's not sweating. The dog's not, not showing signs.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot different. Communication's key, and that's what Jim said makes difference in his practice that he ran for years and sold, that it was communication to that client's key. And this is the best method. This is what we're going to do. So it's flipping that to go, we don't just do $16 vaccines. You're going to get an exam. And if everything's good in the exam, then you're going to get vaccines. And plus, you want that exam anyways. Make it an annual visit.
Well, and I can't tell you the number of times, like, you know, hey, we've got an issue with the ears, or we are palpating something here. You know, maybe there's stones in the bladder, or the, you know, bladder's distended. You know, I'll tell you, I don't have a ton of background. I've never had a biology class in my life. It may make this work really well for my wife and I. I got an exemption to go straight to chemistry and physics in high school.
Really?
I remember it had to be written because it's
I was like saying, how did you get through high school with that biology?
Made the ACT kind of hard in that section. You
Chromosome?
Yeah.
Mitochondria?
You're already way up here. just so you know.
What is the mitochondria, Stephen?
It's part of the cell.
Yes. Again, still up here. So it works well for me. You know, you don't have to be a straight A person. I mean, just saying that made me think back. I didn't score 36 on my ACT. I think I got a 27, only because my parents made me take it twice because I'd already gotten into college. Like, I knew I wanted to go Rolla.
Yeah, you're already in.
You know, I was a B student at best. You know, sometimes a C student. So I always watched what had to be done on a syllabus. I'm like, oh, I hit C. okay, I can coast here and work on another class, which allowed me to finish college in 6 semesters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the point you bring up is that it's
Perfection.
being you, right? It's like people need to be them
That's correct.
themselves. Get to the point how they want to get, what excites them, how makes them work, for success in their life. And what you said is, as you've gone down that journey, and I love sharing the stories, getting know more about you. I've known a lot about you. Not too many surprises today 'cause we've been hanging out a while now. I mean, driving in the snow between places that.
Wasn't that the day that Tesla was going to die?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We took it to like -3% on our way to Kansas City. So this is, what was this, 2017, 18? So it's still several years
Range
ago.
anxiety.
I think it was
James
negative
goes,
4
James
degrees
like,
outside.
You guys got range anxiety, and in his mind, he's like, "I've got it, but I'm acting like I don't."
Yes.
We're totally going to make it where
we're
going.
fine. And later on, he's like, "I had range anxiety too."
And,
one free toe.
twice in 7 years of ownership, or 7 years of ownership, and several 100,000 miles, and that was one of them that I was like, I don't know if we're gonna make it.
That ended up back at Wes's house on a 120 Charger.
Yes, for 3 days.
Yeah. He's gonna get
He loaned me a car.
Enough up and going. So, but no, to hear the journey, what's really cool, I think that people ask, it's not all about the almighty dollar.
No,
We're all doing well enough to be happy, to put what we need on the table, to do the things we want to do. You don't have your plane yet. You could have probably made some decisions to have a plane by now, but you've reinvested in people and those things. And I love seeing there's a bigger purpose to it all than being the next billionaire.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's relationships, people matter, and if we're going to turn the tide of, I think, where people have opportunity, and you bridge that gap of income that there is out there now, because very successful people, I'm not going to knock them, they're successful. Well, we got to figure out how to get the people in the middle to be inspired. And so that's what we want to do here, is inspire, educate, advocate for that person to go, you can own your own practice. And that's one of the best ways to create wealth.
Well, it absolutely is. I mean, if you think you have the pittance for it, I would argue you may struggle more if you're a perfectionist. You're going to have to really work on accepting mistakes and failures, because you're going to make them.
Yes.
And that's where it's going back to being a B student. I'm used to it, I guess.
Yeah.
I've not been a perfectionist my whole life.
Right.
But I'm going to draw it back to DVM office. I remember us sitting down 3 or 4 years ago and going over the concepts of it. You've talked about it earlier. We talked about like, how do we support independent veterinarians, and Kale has been leading this, I think, for you guys internally, and serving several clinics.
Yeah. We were walking out the door one day. Yeah, like, where am I pointing? Walking out the door, and Kale looks at me, and he sees I'm just struggling with putting this together, trying to run the business, grow the business, and put this together. And Kale looks at me, and he's a smart guy. He's like, "Can I take that on?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can."
What you just said there is what I don't care who you are. If you're working for somebody and you want to, grab somebody's coattails and ride with them,
ask.
Samantha Emery was a technician, high school graduate, came to work for us maybe 6 months before we bought our first clinic. Mm-hmm. She saw me struggling with invoices and QuickBooks. She's like, "Can I do that for you?"
That's awesome.
And now she is the queen of our back office.
Yeah.
Very critical to our team. I've rewarded her each year, try to do it better each year. She is a linchpin to what we do.
Yeah.
As much as I am.
Right.
I mean, I could probably disappear tomorrow, and the business would operate better than if she disappeared tomorrow.
Right.
Either way, we'd get through it. We have systems and policies, but just like Kale said, "Hey, can I help you with that?"
Yeah.
It is key to anybody out there who just wants to get ahead in their office, in their workspace, because it doesn't go unnoticed by you and I.
It takes team.
Nobody goes into something knowing exactly how to do it, right? I mean, I remember we don't even have this conference room anymore. I sat in that conference room for 3 days trying to get it to scan an invoice and pull it by line item. Like, that was such a wild concept. It was a 3-day deal just trying to figure out, and Danny could attest to this. I know nothing about technology to a point,
which is actually a good thing.
Which is
how many lines? It's not code, but you had to put matching codes in.
Yeah.
I remember one time you told me it was in the
It's
thousands,
in the thousands
or tens of thousands.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably on a cost of goods sold. It's probably approaching 10,000 lines of different drugs, and in the beginning, it's like, how do I know where Draxon goes? How do I know where Apoquel
You don't even
goes?
know what the drug
I don't
is.
even know what the drug is. So here I am.
How
I'm
do you
like,
spell that thing?
how do you pronounce it? How do you spell it? What does it do?
You're looking at invoice and that multiple times.
Which
like,
AHA category does it fall?
Which AHA? So I'm reading
Oh,
definitions.
it falls under 3.
Yeah.
That's
And then I was super protective of the database. It's like, okay, now I have these codes. I know where Apoquel goes, and like nobody better touch that. So I have backups on my computer. It's like, do not touch my stuff.
and that's our property.
So it has been
Meaning
fun
our
to do
property.
That, but,
well, but even working backwards, like you've had evolutions in how you're tackling it. I know you've gone through a couple different providers
Yeah.
on the PDF scanning that you're doing, and really how you're integrating that. And if someone would lay down $1 million, I still don't think you'd come out with the best product if you'd sat down with a team and said, "Hey, let's build the best thing to start with."
No.
It's the trial and error that you've been through, or that we've been through. We're both tackling that same problem, and we're ending up with some different results. But they're, I love every time we get to sit down and talk about, here's what we're doing, here's what you're doing, and share, and you can take some of ours, and we take some of yours. But it is awesome when you build something like that, and you keep making those iterations. And what do you say? How many? 2, 3, 4. You're probably on your 3rd or 4th major iteration.
Yeah, and the team that's helped along the way too. Now there's several of us upstairs that all just do that, and it's just so much fun to grow something that isn't there and is really being valuable to a lot of folks and
It provides lots of data.
Lots of data. The next iterations that Steven, Sam, and all of us have been working on are going to be super awesome that aren't out yet, but soon. And it's been fun. But yeah, it goes back to just don't be scared to try something.
Well,
just because you don't know what it looks like at the
Don't
end
be
doesn't mean
scared. We're not necessarily competitors. Don't be scared to talk to
we're
the vet
not.
down the street. Our doors would be open. I'd be welcome any doctor in our town to say, "Hey, can I watch a procedure, or do you want to watch mine and tell me how we're
Learn.
different, or spend
Learn.
a day?" That's good,
Yeah.
because that will help your area improve. I mean, we've improved just bouncing ideas off each other.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, to throw out the I call the GOAT of basketball, Michael Jordan, and then Kobe Bryant. In a game, Kobe's asking Michael how he's doing what he's doing, and Michael tells him how he's doing what he's doing on that turn to lock the guy up so he can make that turn.
And they both got better because of it.
They both got better. That's why that's the people that do those things that are willing to share why you got that MVP award with LX Council at the lake.
Yeah.
It's because of those values and that realizing that shouldn't hold anything back.
No.
Let them know what's going on.
One of the things that I appreciated about your approach too, when you're looking at maybe acquiring another practice, was hey, why don't you come down to the lake and spend a couple days with us? Come hang out, see if you like working in our culture, see if you like working in our process before we even talk about anything else. And making that offer to people is awesome, because they may not move forward at all, and your willingness to invest in people for the long term is impressive.
Yeah. Well, and you just mentioned culture at the lake. I invite them to several of our clinics because, our culture isn't the same everywhere. We're even working with that with you guys and our practice managers. Like, what do we have common in our culture, and what is unique about each of our locations that they all have something they're feeding into the way we operate? And there's some normalcy between it, because I can think back and think of the clinics we acquired that were far away from our culture. And those have been the biggest struggles to onboard. And frankly, the first one, we didn't know what our culture was. It was farthest from what we ended up building. It's all great now. And we still have employees that were there from before, and so they've been there coming up on 20 years.
Yeah.
We've had people who've left, spent a couple years away, and come back like, "Hey, we're ready to rejoin you, and we like where you've gone." They, but the journey was hard.
Yeah. Well, looking at our family business, sold the company that bought it. Within a year, one of our stores shut down. Because you're probably pissed about that because it was close to you.
Yes.
Kind of it created a food desert and part of the.
It is.
It is, but they came in and changed everything that we did.
Yeah.
Everything, and that was like, whoa! You got a business that's been here for 50 years, has a following, has a culture, and you're going to change what they sell in the deli. They're going to change what they sell in the meat department. The key things this business was built on, you're going to change those things and expect people to adopt yours. You can't. You can do it slowly over time.
You need buy-in. You need
you introduce. Here's our thing. Here's that thing, and so. But when they came to us, they were like, they thought we reported the numbers wrong. They literally we need to look at the numbers again. Okay. And I mean, I was out of the business.
I
But I was out of the business. They're still calling me because I built quite a bit with my dad, and yeah. So it's when you buy a business, acquire a business, however you want to say it, whatever word that is, you have to respect what's going on and figure out how to bring the two cultures. Like, not that they're gonna become the Borg, and
No.
assimilate, but anyone knows what that is?
Yeah, Star Trek.
Okay, good. I didn't know if Kale did.
I don't.
Oh,
I don't.
I know why you
I'll
don't.
send
I
a
know.
link,
I
I'll
know,
send it to you.
Dan. Danny. I know why you don't like him. For it took a few years.
It took years.
But we can keep going. But to put a bow on a day, it's recognizing people are different, have unique needs, and you got to meet them where they are, and then bring them into your process over time, because you can't just rush in there and say, you're doing our process our way.
Absolutely.
Let's figure it out.
That's the roughest way to go about it.
Figure it out. So that's what I think biggest part with people is to. I think this is interesting. This says, "Be the person your dog thinks you are."
Mhm.
I think about that, and I'm like, yeah, my dog thinks I'm a good person. I think because they wag their tail and they love me. So that's pretty simple. Great industry we're in. I'm sure you never thought you'd be one day owning veterinary practices. 10 years ago, if someone asked me about were you working with veterinarians, my joke is, Kale's going to hate this. I'm going to say it every freaking episode until it's ingrained.
You've already said it about 8 times.
Not today yet. But yeah, you have a work with veterinarians. I got dogs, to today going, wow, what an amazing community. There's a lot of people trying to come in and have their way with this community from other places, other interests, because they're seeing the community is at a certain size and growing. And what you're doing, what we're doing is to protect this great community. So thank you for your time today. We got way too much to talk about. We're going to do this again.
Yeah.
Have you back in. So I really appreciate your time today. And I look forward to having lunch here in a minute, continuing the conversation.
Thank you.
Recording again
been a great
down the
day.
road. Thanks so much. Anything? Anybody?
I'm good.
I don't want to steal your line.
My line.
Your line when you leave.
Peace and blessings.
Ah.
Yeah.
All right. Peace, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, I got it. Wait a minute. I'm not going to say I got it. I forgot. Like and subscribe. All those things.
Oh,
I forget.
yeah.
I'm not good at that. Like every YouTuber's like at the beginning.
You need it
Like
written on the wall.
Like and subscribe.
Right here.
right
Click
now.
click right there.
Yeah, right now. Like and subscribe. All right. Thanks, guys. And that's a wrap.